It is written in an old Hindu scripture. He who sees all beings in his own self, and his own self in all beings, loses fear. It is my hope that in the upcoming year, 2020, you can hold on to this concept like a pillar to model your life around. I have to admit that I find myself walking a pretty fine line right now between causing you to feel fear towards 2020 and making you aware of 2020 in a way where you can embrace and integrate your fear and see it objectively enough that you can welcome 2020 on a physical, mental, emotional, and even spiritual level. Fear is a central theme that all people of Earth are going to be grappling with in 2020. As you already know, a major evolutionary shift in humanity has been well underway for years, but shifts and transformations are not an overnight thing. When you hear the word shift or transformation, most people have this warm, fuzzy, expansive feeling. But if you know anything about shifts or about change in general, you know that something that's usually implied in them is resistance. In the year 2020, this resistance rises to a head or to a peak. Now, rather than in this already lengthy forecast going deep into what to do about your fear, I'll give you a little tip. I wrote a book called The Anatomy of Loneliness. And in fact, when I wrote this book, it was geared specifically towards this year, 2020. And one of the chapters in that book is entirely on fear. So if this is something like a central theme that you want to be focusing on, I recommend picking up a copy of that book and reading that chapter specifically. Many of you have begun to lose your faith in humanity because it seems like the people around you and the world around you, as this peak is something that we all mount towards, have lost their mind. This is a common sensation when humanity is brought to a crossroads. A threshold has been crossed. 2020 is a turning point. Now, if you ask me how this change is being forced, it's being forced by all of those shadowy aspects which used to be in the closet, being brought to the foreground and into plain view. Now, believe me, when these things are brought into plain view, it's going to shock you. It has been shocking you. It will continue to. Basically, the old, what is not working, has to fall away to make place for the new. This is a turning point for humanity towards the new. It is a crossroads between the way it has been and the way it will be. Not just on a personal level, but also a global level. And a crossroads divides us. It puts us in a state of opposition. On a personal level, there are parts of us that want to go right and parts that want to go left. When it comes to a societal level, there are certain people who want to fight for the new way and people who want to continue the old. To be completely honest with you, this year will be a year of battle. A battle of the sexes, a battle of the races, a battle of creeds, a battle of politics, a battle of self versus other, and a year of protest regarding change. The frequency pattern in the world in 2020 is similar to the pattern in the year 532 and in 629, and, making a huge jump so you can maybe relate to it better, the year 1834 and 1898 and 1914 and 1966 and 2001. To understand the kind of things that this frequency gives rise to, all you need to do is look back in history at these specific years at the kind of things that went on. It is a frequency that causes societal system shakeups. That's a bit of an understatement. It dredges societal issues to the surface. It's a frequency that creates major world events that tend to make history. People tend to look back on these years with a sense that they marked an end of an era. It is a potent, wild, and volatile frequency full of both gravity and tension. You could consider it a crisis of the collective consciousness. It will be tempting when you look back in time to think that this pattern or this frequency that's present in 2020 causes negative things to happen. That's not actually the case. What it causes is massive shifts within humanity. This pattern causes the reestablishing of what defines a thing and how that thing operates. It is a restructuring of our lives, of our society, of our world in general. That's going to spell good news for certain industries. The year 2020 will be a year of intense progression for technology, sciences, world trade, travel, air and space advancement, as well as the move away from fossil fuels and patriarchy. During times like this, opposing systems and beliefs crash. This creates both national and international crisis and conflicts that often have lasting traumatic consequences, as well as lasting positive changes that redefine human life. Which is why this pattern leads to events that get into the history books. 2020 is a catapult for a revolutionary decade. It's really important to realize that we're actually all together in this. Now, when it comes to the central theme of 2020, it is to redefine. 2020 is a year where the intensity of opposition and conflict is turned up to the boiling point, so as to put people in a position to have to make conscious personal choices. People and societies must decide and define who they are, what they believe in, what they stand for. And guess what? This is going to be causing a major redistribution of power. People are going to be redefining themselves. Cultures are going to be redefining themselves. Societies are going to be redefining themselves. The world itself is going to redefine itself. The scene that comes to mind when trying to capture this essence of 2020 is the scene in Braveheart. Basically, he's sitting on his horse and he's riding back and forth in front of the army that he's about to lead into battle. And he's trying to convey to them why it is that they're about to go ahead and fight a fight they most likely are going to lose. It's for the sake of who they are and what they stand for. The collective consciousness of the universe itself, which, just so you know, humanity is a fragment of, is already decided that the time has come to integrate self and other, individual and collective. Obviously, these seemingly opposed concepts have been at odds, but this opposition between them is slated for an end. This means you will be facing the task of redefining yourself while integrating what is other. This is a phase within humanity to learn how to have yourself and have others too at the very same time. This year, you will be redefining yourself, and defining yourself is a process of individuation. You're going to be answering questions like this. Who am I? What do I stand for? What is my truth? Do other people define me? How do I keep myself when I'm in relationship with another person or within a group? You will establish a sense of loyalty towards yourself. This sense of loyalty is going to lead you to a place where you're no longer making compromises, and it's this place where fear is going to arise. The dominant theme around fear when it comes to 2020, I should say one of many, is this concept of me in the context of relationship. Let's just be honest. Humans are terrified of each other. Fear is the pushing away of that which you do not want to include as a part of yourself. Fear is at its core the opposite of love. So fear causes you to individuate, but unconsciously and out of pure resistance. Here's the good and the bad news in this. This largely unconscious individuation process is inevitably going to lead people to that point of the unification between self and other. Here's how it goes. When we are individuating on an unconscious level, we're pushing all things away from ourselves. We're causing the opposition to the degree that we understand and come to the awareness that what we personally stand for, our personal values, and what we personally desire is, in fact, unity. This is where, ironically, the new battle becomes the battle to end battles. It's at this point that relationships become a conscious choice. Love itself becomes a conscious choice. I'm going to be honest with you, though. This awareness that what a person personally wants and that choice point they come to, or what they're choosing as relationship and deliberately choosing unity, this awareness is going to come much more harshly to some than to others. The truth that has already been accepted at an objective level within the universe and that humanity must catch up to is that we can't keep opposing each other. We must end the zero-sum game. Now, for those of you who are curious about what the zero-sum game is, I did a video on it. It's going to be included in the links on the descriptions on this video. Basically, within the greater universe, the decision has been made to heal division. Sadly, to come to a choice point where all fragments within the universe desire integration again instead of division, division's going to have to get worse. This means the suicide crisis will rise. The opioid crisis will rise. This means that loneliness is going to get a whole lot worse because people haven't recognized loneliness itself as the great problem of humanity. In other words, loneliness is the crisis of the human race. Those of you who have heard me speak before know that I talk a lot about the fact that some people need a whack a tree at 70 miles an hour moment in order to awaken. The awareness and decision to integrate within the universe is like a massive tsunami. That tsunami is headed towards all fragments within Source consciousness. Basically, Source is pointing the tsunami towards all parts of itself. You must get on board with and ride the tsunami. If in response to your fear you try to oppose that tsunami of change by getting controlling, rigid, sticking to what you know, being set in your ways, and holding to what was and is familiar, you will get hit by it. And in case you don't already know, a tsunami is traveling at the speed of a jet aircraft. You will not outrun it, and you will not be able to fight against it. The question to ask yourself is, what role do I want to play in this new structure? Redefining yourself can feel like the owning of a new form. Now, doing this is kind of like a personal rebirth. As such, there will be labor pains in the transition. Society will be confronted with all the things that need to change about society. You will be confronted with all the things you need to change about yourself. This opposition can lead us to a sense of thwarted motivation. It can lead us towards a feeling of being fed up, quite frankly. And when people become fed up, they like to throw in the towel. For this reason, it's really important to understand that a lot of people are going to be jumping on board with spirituality this year. Will all of them be doing it in the right way? No. Here's what I mean by that. When we feel fed up and we want to throw in the towel, often we use spiritual practice as a way of escaping from our physical reality or escaping from whatever we are fed up with. You couldn't do anything worse in 2020 than to use spirituality and those practices of spirituality, shadow work, doesn't matter what you're subscribing to, as a method of escapism. Those spiritual practices which you subscribe to, they have to be used in a completely different way, where you're using them to gain objective perspective and clarity, where you're using them to really develop resources so as to take that clarity and those resources directly into and commit to your physical temporal experience. In 2020, in order to redefine yourself, you must decondition yourself from patterns that no longer serve you or the world you live in. You redefine yourself so as to give your life new meaning. You reevaluate your values and priorities, and from there, take action to build your life around those core values. This means you must heal from your past and the no longer beneficial ways that your past made you adapt. You must redefine reality. Everything that causes you to feel oriented and stable in the truth of reality may very well be thrown out the window. Therefore, the way to approach 2020 is with curiosity and flexibility. You must be willing to let go of what you think you know. You must be willing to let go of the old and consider completely new perspectives and ways of doing things. This is a great year to practice the art of going back to the drawing board. It is a year for redefining what you need to cultivate in your life and what you need to let go of. This is a year to realign with your deepest desires, needs, and values. By reassessing and realigning with your deepest desires and values and ideas, what's going to be happening here is that you're going to be developing a sense of inner authority. That inner authority is really important because it means you're going to be entering into relationships while keeping your own personal truth. But here's the thing about truth, isn't it? The fact that you're developing truth means that one of the central themes of 2020 is going to be truth versus lies. Becoming aware of what is true may just cause us to throw everything we thought was true out the window. Inevitably, it causes us to adjust. Again, this is all going to force flexibility. What's going to really benefit you this year, as you saw in all of the above reasons that I've given you, with flexibility, with changing your attitudes, with taking on new perspectives, with shifting everything you thought you were, redefining yourself, air is the element to master in 2020. As you redefine yourself, what is going to become strikingly obvious to all of us is that as a collective, humanity is facing a responsibility crisis. Basically, what it's going to seem like is that nobody's taking responsibility and absolutely everyone is pointing fingers. From the personal level to the politics level. It's like across the board of all society. So, part of redefining ourselves is to really make it clear what we are and what we aren't responsible for. And taking personal responsibility for those things that are our responsibility is a central theme to redefining ourselves in a way where we have solid structure in our lives. As for Earth itself, it is also going to be redefining itself. I'm going to let you use your own mind to imagine what might happen when the Earth itself begins this process of redefining itself. But as for the upcoming year, the frequency of 2020 will lend itself to some earthquakes and even more than that, to floods. If you're in an area that is prone to or at risk of flooding, make sure you have insurance for floods, as that is showing up as the most dominant natural disaster in the upcoming year. Consider having a plan for these types of things, part of your personal plan to commit to taking personal responsibility. Consistent with the theme of fear, inflammation is the dominant malady or physical ailment that is facing all of humanity across the board for 2020. Anything you can do on top of facing and integrating your fear in order to decrease inflammation is going to benefit you in 2020. It is a year to take anti-inflammatory actions. For example, support your body with an anti-inflammatory diet. Exercise, get enough sleep, hydrate, and de-stress in whatever ways work best for you. 2020 is also a year of intense karmic return. There are some of these cycles over the course of our history where the patterns within the universe are incredibly intense in terms of karmic return. 2020 is no joke. Those of you who have sown flowers will see the positive return of having planted flowers. Those of you who have sown weeds will see the negative return of having planted those weeds. In 2020, the reality that what goes around comes around is an overall concept within the universe itself that it is interested in teaching to all aspects of itself, and humanity is one of those aspects. Seeing as how this pattern causes the reestablishing of what defines a thing and how that thing operates, in 2020 you need to consciously invest your resources as if each investment was a vote for the future you want. Sticking with the concept of karmic return, consider everything you do as the planting of a seed for the future. Each seed is a vote for either a weed or a flower. 2020 is a year to look beyond to a larger vision. Beyond to the larger vision of what you want in your life, beyond to an overall vision in terms of what you want for society itself, and to hold to that vision like a compass that is pointing you north, no matter what storm it may encounter on the way. I want you to ask yourself the following questions. Am I willing, or even ready, to redefine myself? If not, you need to lovingly resolve that resistance. Ask yourself, what am I afraid will happen if I redefine myself? What do I need to let go of on a mental, emotional, and physical level so I can commit my resources on all levels to what really matters to me? Having heard all this information, how are you reacting to it? Did you only notice all negative? Could you potentially be trapped in one of your old patterns of perceiving yourself to be only powerless? In case you didn't pick up on it, 2020 is a wide open door for opportunity for the new. Most people get stuck in a box. Most people live and die inside that box. Most people, they define themselves, or they are defined by others, and they stick to that definition and do not change it. 2020 is the peak of an entire phase where the universe itself is going to break that box for you if you don't choose to do it yourself. 2020 is the crossroads of personal choice. And you are not a victim to a crossroads. You can choose to go right or you can choose to go left, and you can even choose to not choose at all. 2020 holds a truth that you can redefine yourself at any moment, and that other people's ways of defining you don't have to add up to your definition of yourself. In order to ride this wave of tsunami of 2020, you need to take a proactive role in getting on that wave of redefining yourself. And if all of this is only terrifying you, you don't see the flip side of this coin. And if all that I have shared does nothing but terrify you, it means you're not seeing the flip side of this coin. You're not seeing the beauty of this energy. You can see the beauty in that man who decides that despite years spent in one career, he's going to switch his time and focus on what really fills him with passion. You can see it in that woman who has always been a doormat but who decides to walk away. You can see it in those people who have always been fiercely independent and afraid of intimacy, deciding to really commit to an interdependent relationship. You can see it in America deciding to abolish slavery. You can see it in women getting the vote. You can see it in that medical innovation that changes our entire approach to illness. You can see it in the reshaping of politics. It is never too late to redefine yourself. You can't be too old to redefine yourself. And if it is never too late to redefine yourself, then that means it's never too late to redefine the world. Have a great year.